A terrible natural disaster revealed the largest engineering mistake in United States history. Not only did New Orleans levees flood after Hurricane Katrina hit on August 29, 2005, but the government wasn't prepared to triage injured or evacuate survivors.
I want to get some perspective here because earlier today the images
that is perspective.
Hang on a second.
That is all the perspective you need.
Hang on a second. With the convoys, there was food, there was medicine, there was water, and there were supplies. Is anybody saying that we're going to get that was going in there today to the people that you're talking about?
No idea.
Again, I want to thank you all for, and Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. The FEMA director's working 24 hours.
With the U.S. taking measure of its leadership, across the Atlantic, 20 million German viewers were tuned into the TV debate between their Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder of the Social Democratic Party, SPD, and his challenger from the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, Angela Merkel. After Chancellor Schroeder made his opening remarks, a moderator tossed to his opponent.
Für diese Politik erbitte ich Unterstützung und neues Vertrauen.
Frau Merkel, Stichwort Führungsstärke. Aktuelles Beispiel, die Katastrophe in New Orleans, vielleicht eine neue Ölkrise. Ein Kanzler, eine Kanzlerin muss in Krisenzeiten den Menschen das Gefühl geben, sie da sicher durchbringen zu können, sie beschützen zu können. Warum sollten die Menschen Ihnen in schwierigen Zeiten vertrauen?
Ich habe in meiner politischen Arbeit gezeigt, dass wir jetzt in 11 Bundesländern regieren, viele Wahlen gewonnen haben. Ich habe die CDU auf einen Modernisierungskurs geführt, der...
She stumbled through the opening. She was a force inside her party, but not among the public. The 2005 campaign wasn't going well. In fact, after starting with a solid advantage over the unpopular incumbent Chancellor Schroeder, her party's poll numbers were consistently dropping, while his were going up. Everyone expected the charismatic Schroeder to dominate the debate and seal the fate of his opponent, the meek scientist from East Germany. Though born in West Germany, East Germany is where Merkel grew up and where her political career began. In 1990, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and as the two Germanys, East and West, were making moves to reunify, Dr. Angela Merkel took a job as deputy spokesperson for the East German Prime Minister. That same year, in the first unified German federal elections in December of 1990, Merkel was elected to the Bundestag, the German parliament. But even prior to her election, she was already being eyed by Chancellor Helmut Kohl for a spot in his cabinet. Merkel had only one demand: no women's issues, no family stuff. But when Chancellor Kohl offered her a spot as Federal Minister for Women and Youth, she immediately dropped the pretense. Merkel would be the youngest ever cabinet minister, and she would feel it. The media called her Kohl's girl, Kohl's little girl. Chancellor Kohl was using it too, mein Mädchen, my girl. When she brought forward a bill on workplace sexual harassment, one member told her, "You know, girl, if I didn't find you so nice, I wouldn't vote for any of this rubbish." After helping to pass a bill regarding abortion, a newspaper captioned a photo of her with Kohl on the floor of the Bundestag. Gut gemacht, Angela. Nicely done, Angela. Kohl was the chancellor that led Germany through its reunification, a leader that had brought Germany through a time of crisis. She still had to overcome and make her way. As she told a journalist from Der Spiegel, "I have to be tougher or it just won't work." Perhaps Merkel had flashbacks to the early 90s during the 2005 debate with Schroeder. When she talked, Schroeder, who became chancellor after Kohl, laughed. He rolled his eyes. He even gave an indignant look of fake panic when Merkel mentioned unemployment numbers. To him, she was the new girl on the block. Her party had lost its 20-point lead in the polls, and he was still chancellor. But despite Schroeder's dismissive attitude, Angela had acquired a considerable amount of political experience between her time as Federal Minister for Women and Youth in '91 and her campaign to be chancellor in 2005. Rather than underestimate her, it would have been wise to note she had taken a few political scalps to get to that stage. Her first cabinet promotion was in 1994 to be Minister for the Environment and Nuclear Safety, during which she facilitated an agreement with wealthy industrial nations to commit to reducing emissions.
The conference president and German Environment Minister Angela Merkel outlined their mission to halt global warming.
After Helmut Kohl and CDU lost the chancellorship in 1998, Merkel became General Secretary of the party. Though a powerful position among the grassroots of the CDU, in terms of influence, Merkel was still a couple spots behind Wolfgang Schäuble, party chairman and Kohl's chosen successor, and Edmund Stoiber, minister-president of Bavaria. Merkel's first move to consolidate power came in 1999, but started with events out of her control. It began when a lobbyist claimed he had bribed Kohl's government to get approval for an arms sale to Saudi Arabia. It was further revealed that this donation hadn't been reported to the financial authorities, thereby heavily implying that former Chancellor Kohl had facilitated the illegal contribution. Rather than remain loyal to Kohl, Merkel made a shocking play. On December 22, 1999, she published an op-ed in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung criticizing her mentor. Helmut Kohl, she said, had harmed the party. The CDU needed to move on. Deciding how to begin the new era is less up to Helmut Kohl than to us. The party must therefore learn to walk. It must dare to take up the struggle with political adversaries, even without its old warhorse. With this move, she wasn't just elevating her own standing in the party at the expense of Kohl, but at the expense of his chosen successor, Wolfgang Schäuble, who himself became engulfed in the donations scandal, eventually forced to resign as party chair. At the turn of the millennium, Merkel took over as the first woman head of her party. But members of CDU now saw her for what she was, ambitious, a Machiavellian on a path towards the German chancellorship. Yet many surmise this woman still wasn't fit to take on Gerhard Schröder in a general election. The pugilist chancellor could only be vanquished by someone who shared his likeness. So Merkel's next rival, Edmund Stoiber, conspired with a group of conservative governors to stop her from running for chancellor in the 2002 election. Faced with the prospect of losing the nomination fight and diminishing her authority, Merkel deferred. She told Stoiber she would support his candidacy, but for a cost. In the event he didn't become chancellor, she wanted to not only continue as party chair, but take over as head of the parliamentary opposition in the Bundestag as well. Merkel was in a corner, and really it was the only play she had. But as it turns out, Stoiber lost the election to Schröder by the narrowest of margins. So, Merkel's gamble actually paid off. She was now not only the head of the party, she was also the leader of the opposition in parliament. With Stoiber, Schäuble, and Kohl sidelined, Merkel was now the center of gravity in the CDU. To take on Gerhard Schröder was now only a matter of waiting. Everyone who underestimated her was out of the way, with the exception of one. Fast forward to 2005, and Chancellor Schröder is relishing the fight with CDU nominee Angela Merkel. When she talked, Schröder laughed. He rolled his eyes. He even gave an indignant look of fake panic when Merkel mentioned unemployment numbers. And despite some media hand-wringing over Schröder's behavior, on election night his SPD and Angela's CDU ended in a virtual dead heat. The Chancellor's bombast seemed to have served him well. A bombast he continued, albeit more frustrated, on television that night.
Ja. Bundeskanzler, das sind Sie ja noch bis zur Neuwahl.
Das bleibe ich auch, Herr
bis zur Neuwahl eines neuen.
Auch wenn Sie dagegen arbeiten.
Und wenn Sie das da wieder.
Even after losing, Schröder acted like he won by a mile. His disdain for Merkel was clear. But she also had choice words for him.
Bin einigermaßen überrascht, in welcher Art und Weise nun hier von der anderen Seite das Ergebnis dargestellt wird. Es ist einfach schlicht und ergreifend so, dass Sie heute Abend nicht gewonnen haben und Rot-Grün nicht gewonnen hat. Das ist die Realität, ja.
Lassen Sie uns
2 weeks later, Schröder was out, pushed by his own party so they could form a coalition government with his rival, Angela, a final humiliation. Merkel became Chancellor of Germany on November 22, 2005. Kohl's girl was now on track to be the most powerful person in Europe, a political survivor. She would immediately become the crisis chancellor the debate moderator asked about. Her job would be to give the people of Germany the feeling that they would make it through more than a decade of crises. First, when Lehman Brothers collapsed and the 2008 financial crisis arrived to banks in Berlin, her government shored up domestic institutions, assured private savings, and contributed to bailouts of EU member states with acute financial symptoms. Though as part of this, she also became the face of cold fiscal austerity, a target for the resentment of Southern Europeans beholden to Western Europeans to keep their governments afloat. And crises continued to arrive. The 2009 recession, the Greek bailouts and austerity crisis, NSA spying, Russian seizure of Crimea, the refugee crisis of 2015, potential US withdrawal from the NATO alliance, each contributed to Merkel's image as the world's most powerful woman. Some even called her leader of the free world. Her domestic agenda drifted further into the background as she handled various crises on the world stage. And yet she continued to prevail in election after election after election. Her personal popularity remained high as Germany coasted to record low unemployment, a signal of the largest period of domestic stability since unification in 1871. A big thanks to Please Help Me Pay My Bills for sponsoring this exploration. When YouTube demonetizes education videos and algorithm, please help me pay my bills is there to stop YouTubers from going under.
I used to be a fan of Merkel.
The exploration and use promo code PLZ Don't Hate.
I think what she did to Germany is a disgrace. It's a total disgrace.
CNN projects Donald Trump wins the presidency.
Can now say the decision taken in 1975 by this country to join the common market has been reversed by this referendum.
Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our Independence Day.
Earlier this month, Italian voters rejected a referendum to alter that nation's constitution. The vote was seen as the latest instance of a rising tide of populism.
The rise of Geert Wilders has left mainstream politicians reeling. His message is simple: close the borders, ban the Quran.
And the breaking news is the far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro has won Brazil's presidential race.
Si sous la pression de Mme Merkel, l'un de ses poulains, M. Macron ou Fillon, accepte encore plusieurs millions de migrants.
Wait till you see Germany. They're having riots in the streets. They're having crime that they've never had before. And Merkel, no longer a fan.
Result was the AfD, which became the third largest party as it polled 12.6%.
Und die AfD 13.
The AfD, which promised to fight an invasion of foreigners, capitalized on a backlash over Mrs. Merkel's decision to open Germany's borders to over 1 million migrants and refugees in 2015.
Wir werden sie jagen. Wir werden Frau Merkel oder wen auch immer jagen und wir werden uns unser Land und unser Volk zurückholen.
It's impossible to talk about the rise of Angela Merkel's career without addressing the last few years in global politics. When Merkel announced in late 2018 that she would resign as leader of her party and not seek further political offices, it was an expected development after years of walloping in the polls, criticism over her refugee policies, infighting with her sister party in Bavaria over the same, and the rebirth of the German far right. But what are we to make of these changes? Merkel's relinquishing of power wasn't like Kohl or Schroeder simply overstaying their welcome in the Chancellor's office. It was a large-scale rejection of the traditional Volksparteien that have dominated the German political system since the end of World War II. I reported on this channel at the end of 2017 about Merkel's difficulty in forming a government after elections, and asked this question.
Is this the crisis, or is this a delay of the crisis? Let's say Angela Merkel does get her governing coalition. It grants stability today, but does that come at the price of creating the chaos of tomorrow?
Now, Merkel did indeed form the coalition, and even after her announced departure, there's no chaos, of course. But one thing has become clear since then. The crisis is here, but it's unlike any of the crises with which Merkel had to deal in the rest of her chancellorship. Merkel's modus operandi is to wait until the final moment, then take decisive action. In the global recession, Crimea seizure, Greek bailouts, these were crises with deadlines. Merkel would hesitate, then seize the middle ground and forge solutions just before the bell. Even early in her career, she less roundly defeated any of the men who stood in the way of her political ambitions, and more survived until they deflated themselves. She just sticks around. And yet, global populism seems to be the one issue which she hasn't been able to outlast. It's impossible to know if she'd be facing the same political doom had she decided against allowing migrants into Germany, but it's extremely likely. She'd long been seen as the face of the European establishment, and at this moment in European politics, there isn't a single mainstream Western European politician with their head above water. The continent is at a crossroads, and her party and her country are making turns towards the political wings. It is at this exact moment that the world needs a leader, as the debate moderator phrased it in the first question to the future chancellor in 2005, who in times of crisis could give people the impression that they can bring them through, that they can protect them. And it is at this exact moment that Angela Merkel is leaving the stage.
you. I wanted to talk with you about something in the interest of transparency. Now, I don't know you personally, but I try to respect you in my writing and my research and everything that I do on the channel, including more recently in money making. Those of you who are regular watchers of the channel have noticed in recent months there's new B-roll, there's been some new music licensed. I was able to get some artwork done for the Berlin airlift video that was really cool, and that's possible for 3 reasons. Number 1 is that this channel continues to grow, which I find surprising and deeply gratifying. The second reason is patrons who donate on Patreon, allow me to justify time taken from my master's degree and internship stuff. And yeah, you probably noticed 3 sponsorships. This is a tough one because ultimately it is selling to you. And in the case of some of you, donating to people who are already giving me money on Patreon. But no one of these 3 things can make this channel accomplish its mission of adding value to the world. I, at this point, need all 3. And therefore, I wanted to communicate that to you personally before I continued. To those of you who donate on Patreon, to those of you who click a sponsor, to those of you who just come here, watch a video, learn something, and leave, thank you. I don't know what the future holds, but I am humbled to be here, giving it a go with you. Later, y'all.